Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? Hope so. Last time I had a microphone in my hand, that was for karaoke at my house. It's a different state of mind at that point. Welcome, everyone. It's very nice to be doing this in front of actual people for once, instead of looking at faces on MS Teams. My name is Evertson Croes, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about AWS Amplify. But before we start, let me turn on this thing. Before we start, the most important slide. Who am I? My name is Evertson Croes. I'm originally from Aruba. Moved here 11 years ago, here being Netherlands, to study IT, and I stayed here, where I started to work at Luminous. I'm now a senior software engineer at Luminous. And yeah, I get to do a lot of cool stuff there, including doing talks like this, but working with AWS and front-end, back-end technologies, you name it. I'm also an AWS community builder since a few months ago, which means I do a lot of stuff in the AWS community, sharing stuff, doing talks like this, or blogs, or whatever. So that's new, that's nice. Also, I'm a co-founder of Palmera Bytes. I'll talk a bit more about this because it has something to do with my Amplify story. And when I'm not working for one of these three companies, I also spend a lot of time gaming because I need to do something else in my free time. So what's on the agenda? Few things, but mostly just Amplify. What is it? Why should you use it? How does it work? When should you use it? And who should use it? So I think it's a pretty simple agenda to follow. And we're going to start with, I think, the most important question, if you've never heard of it, is what is Amplify? So I could start by listing off like the things, all of the tools and the things that you have in Amplify, but I want to start off with this. Is just based off my own experience, is using the power of AWS Cloud, so all of the benefits that you have, like the scalability and pay-per-use and stuff like that, performance, all of those things without being an AWS expert at the beginning. So it doesn't mean that you don't have to know, you still have to know a bit, but you don't have to be an expert to use the power of AWS Cloud. To explain it a bit, it starts off with just you answering some questions. So you're going to use a command line interface of Amplify. You do a command, and then it's just going to ask you a few questions in normal English. So it's just going to be like, what do you want to call your API and your endpoints and stuff like that? You answer a few questions, and you're done. You answer these questions based on certain functionality categories in Amplify. So the reason I say you can do this without being an expert is because at the beginning, I'm not thinking about anything in AWS. So I'm not thinking about lambdas or API gateways or anything like that. I'm just thinking about these functionality categories. I want to add API functionality. I want to add authentication or anything else on the list on the right side. And I can achieve this functionality by answering a few questions. So that's how it is. I answer a few questions, and things get built for me in the AWS Cloud related to this functionality, this set of functionalities. Of course, when you have these things finally running in the cloud, you also want to use them. So Amplify also has SDKs in all your favorite JavaScript frameworks, or Android, iOS native, or hybrid, or whatever. There are packages for all of those things. In order to easily be able to use those things that you have generated by answering these questions on the left here. And finally, you also have some UI components that will help you also with talking with these functionalities. For example, here you have the authentication UI component, which is also available in all of these languages. And basically what it does is it gives you a UI for logging in, registering, forgot password, and all of those things out of the box. So you don't have to think about your authentication ever again. We never have to build this again, we just use it. And of course, you can choose not to use this UI and just build your own if you want. Of course, I also could have let this slide show like this. What is Amplify? It's a command line interface. You have the functionality categories, the front-end libraries to talk to those functionalities, and UI components. So that's it in a nutshell. We are going to dive a bit deeper into it in a bit. But first, yeah, why would you use it then? Why would you use this framework? And I'll start by talking a bit about why I started using it. So I'm the co-founder of Palmera Bytes, and that's a group that started with the goal to help a group of friends of ours to get a job in IT without an IT degree. And finally, that was successful. And we decided, as this group, we wanted to build an app, but it had to be low cost, of course, because we don't have any money and we don't want to use too much money. So you should look at it like a startup. It should be a fast setup. We don't want to spend a lot of time on AWS. We're going to spend more time actually building our functionality that we have in mind for our app. It should be compatible with React.js because that's the framework we learned as a group to program together. And at that time, I think 2 years ago, it was a big topic, still is today, but today we're all cloud experts at Luminous, but a few years ago it wasn't the case. And it was all, we need to focus on the cloud. So I thought, now, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's do something in the cloud. So with a bit of searching, we found this, AWS Amplify, the fastest, easiest way to build mobile and web apps that scale. Sounds nice. And also we saw React at the bottom there, so we thought, hey, we're going to give this a try. It was at version 0.0.0.1 or something when we started using it, so we took a big risk there. But it paid off, I think, in my opinion. And also a bit of my experience so far as to why you should use it. So with that group, we created this app, and it's called Collaby.com. And it's an app for event planning, and we built it completely on Amplify. And what I really liked about the experience is we mostly had front-end engineers in our group, and they were able to build complete vertical issues. So not only the front end, but also go into the back end and build things, add new API endpoints without actually knowing what they're doing, but still successfully building the complete function. So the complete issue. So that's something which really, I think we worked like 1 year entirely on the app before anyone was like, hey, how does this actually work? How is this? And then we started to look at the background. So that was a pretty good experience. Also at Luminous, we built this Cloud the Game, also on Amplify, and we had like 2 weeks or something to build something. And we decided, let's use Amplify, and in no time we were able to build this application where our colleagues can log in and they can add things that they do in the cloud, and they get points and badges, and we had competitions against each other, and it gets really fierce, and it was very competitive. It was really fun. And we're still working on it now on Amplify. And thanks to Amplify, you could easily, we were more focused on the logic than we were on the infrastructure and where is it running and cloud, basically. Also, why you should use it. It's a good introduction to the cloud, I think. I've been giving training of AWS for a few groups already, and I noticed that this is a good way for people to use the cloud for the first time if they've never done anything, because you start to actually build something, and in the training we also see like, oh, you run this command, let's see what that did in Amplify. And they start to get excited, and they can see like the possibilities. You know, I always had all of these ideas, but I'm not that good in backend. And now you can build maybe your hobby project using Amplify. Also, why you should use it, a lot of out-of-the-box functionality. I think this is very important. So, for example, I mentioned already this one. Out of the box, you can get everything you need for authentication. So, including this UI, but also all of the flows for logging in, register, forgot password, authenticate, email activation links. So when you register, that you get an email activation link, or things like log in with Google or Facebook. All of those things you can get out of the box, so you never have to worry about that again. Something else, I don't know if this is readable, but it's not really important. But just to tell you what, it's a GraphQL schema, and the GraphQL schema. We don't have to go through it right now, but it just has a type show and a type review. But the annotations that are there, the add model and the add auth, that's the part that Amplify adds to it, which will generate a lot of out-of-the-box functionality for us. For example, the add model, just by adding that to the show, it will generate an entire DynamoDB table for you. So it's going to be persisted in a database for you, even though you don't have to care about where it is persisted, but just by doing this, you know it is somewhere persisted. for you. And something else I think is really cool is the @auth, which is not for authentication, but for authorization. And usually we spend a lot of time building code for authentication, but also for authorization in the sense of, okay, I know that you are user X, but what can you do? What are you allowed to do? And just by adding this annotation and a few rules, it will automatically generate code in the backend. It will make sure that if someone tries to do something that is against these rules, you will get a 403. So instead of building it yourself, you can say things like, only the person that created this show can edit it, for example, or only people that are logged in can edit, but people that are not logged in can only read, for example. And that's pretty powerful, I think, because usually you have to build those things yourself, depending on what framework you're using. Something else also out of the box is CI/CD. So with the hosting functionality in Amplify, you can get a complete CI/CD pipeline with a few commands. And then you can see a preview. You can customize the pipeline however you want with the different phases. And that's it. And then you have a pipeline out of the box also. So that was, yeah, I think why you should use it, all of those things. Let's dive a bit deeper into how it actually works. First of all, infrastructure as code. If you've never heard of that, infrastructure as code is basically you are describing your infrastructure in code, I guess. But usually we use code to define our logic. So our logic or business flow, whatever you want to call it. But now we can use code to define the infrastructure that logic is going to run on or communicate with, or however you want to see it. And that's on AWS, you do that with CloudFormation. CloudFormation is the infrastructure as a code solution from AWS. And it basically looks a bit like this. This is the JSON. It's available in JSON format and also in YAML format. But really, take my advice, you really don't want to be doing this by hand. This is very hard. And I don't think anyone does this anymore by hand. I think you have a lot of solutions to be able to not have to do this by hand. So one of them is Amplify. You also have the CDK or Terraform or stuff like that to handle this for you. But yeah, that's that. And now I'm going to explain the infrastructure as code part. So again, you have the CLI, and I'm going to talk you through what actually happens now when you use Amplify, what happens in the background, so you understand a bit how that works. So again, I answer a few questions in a terminal. And what happens is it will generate, based on these answers that I give, it will generate CloudFormation templates. So you never have to look at them, but it's just somewhere in your repository. And you will actually get files in your repository. So that's just like you have files in Git for your code. You will also have now files in Git that represent your infrastructure. And that's in YAML or JSON. But that's only locally on your computer. So now you have, all you did after you answer these questions is you have a bunch of files on your computer. You still haven't done anything yet in Amplify. So then you run a command called amplify push. And what it does is it's going to do one thing first. It's going to compare whatever you have locally with whatever you have on your S3 deployment bucket. And that's a bucket that when you create an Amplify project, one is created for you, and that will be your remote state of your infrastructure. So just like Git, you have a remote instance of your branch and you have a local state of your branch. You also have a local state of your infrastructure based on what you answered in those questions. And you have a remote state somewhere. So it's going to do a comparison, and it's going to tell you, hey, if you do this push, I see that you created this API and you updated this or whatever. Is this correct? And usually you say yes, because usually it's correct. And then it will actually start to work. It will send all the templates together to CloudFormation. CloudFormation can read these templates. It understands the templates. And it will then go to work, starting to create resources in AWS or update them or change configuration or whatever it is that you change. And this is basically the entire flow of getting from answering some questions to getting actual things happening in AWS. Of course, we're not done yet because we also need a way to talk to these services. So now we just have a bunch of things running, but our front-end application also needs to use this. So also when running the push command, what happens is it exports a file called the AWS exports. And usually, depending if you're doing JavaScript, it's a JavaScript file, or what, I haven't used Android but in iOS, but there's a file that has the important identifiers for your environment in it. And that's important because your front end needs to know, hey, which API do I need to talk to, which Lambda or which authentication things do I need to use. So you are not spending any time thinking about this. This is all automated for you. You just get one function where you say, take this AWS exports, initialize, and you know everything now, and I just call API.get, for example, if it's a REST API, and it works. So then this is a React logo, so our front end now can use this AWS exports to talk to AWS. And now the circle is complete. This is how it works. Yeah, so I don't know how much time I have left. Okay, yeah, when should you use Amplify? So now you know what it is, my opinions on why you should use it and how it works. When should you use it? A few things. I get asked this question a lot, like when should you use this? When should you use as a CDK or something else? I think if it's possible to use Amplify, you should use it over the CDK because of all the front-end hooks that you have and all the out-of-the-box functionality that you get, that you don't have to think about a bunch of stuff. Of course, you're giving away a bit of control that you have in a CDK, but also sometimes that's a good thing, I think, depending on what you want to build. So I think if your main use case matches the Amplify categories that you have, if you can map the main use cases to it, I think I would advise to use Amplify. That doesn't mean that everything should fit. It's possible to do stuff outside of Amplify because you have a Lambda function, so you can do anything from that Lambda function. You can call other services if you want. Of course, if you want to do that, then you're leaving Amplify and you have to know a bit more about what you're doing. So, so if it's just like edge cases or some functionalities on the side, but the main is still can be mapped, I would advise Amplify. If it's just a CRUD application, of course, just CRUD being create, read, update, and delete applications, just reading from a database or writing and stuff like that, I would advise it. Static web hosting, you can do it. You can just use the hosting category. So it's also possible just to take one category of functionality and use it. I think also Amplify can be really helpful in proof of concepts. So think about if you're doing business design and you're trying to think about, okay, where should my business go next? Should it go left or right? You have these ideas, and eventually you have to test these ideas some way. You can think of maybe doing some kind of paper prototyping or stuff like that. And that's cheaper, I guess, but nothing beats really getting real data from people using it behind their screens. So I think this is a very easy way to really quickly get something live that people can just click and start using, and for you to get your data about the usage, about your idea. And as I mentioned before, I think yeah, it's a good introduction for people that want to learn how to use cloud, so for beginners. Who? So I think it overlaps a bit with the previous one, but who should use it? I think the group that has the most to gain from this is front-end engineers, as I've seen myself out of my experience. Because also the backend is JavaScript, and the front end can also be JavaScript if you want, you can get by with the entire stack just doing JavaScript. So, so I think this is a way for front-enders to be able to build a complete application without having to know a lot about backend technology or the cloud even. So I think that's the biggest group. I said again, beginners, startups, and companies that want to experiment. I think a lot of experimentation. You can use this to quickly get your idea out there and test it. And of course, everyone. I think everyone should use it and try it out once, see if it's for you. That was it. If you want to know more, of course, I haven't showed any live code today because I don't have enough time, but I have a video on YouTube. You can search my name and then AWS user group, and you'll find a video of me live coding this for 40 minutes, I think. You can search Amplify on the Luminous blog, and we have some blogs there written about Amplify or a lot of other things. You can check out the Amplify training that I give myself. You can check at the luminous.eu/academy. We have a lot of trainings there, and specifically in the one of Amplify, we'll do like a half day of going through all of the functionalities and answering your questions and getting something live in 4 hours. You can do that online or face-to-face. There's a Discord for Amplify, so if you get started with Amplify and you get stuck, there's a Discord you can join, and every Thursday, I think, they have this Amplify office hours at 9 o'clock, where the developers come online and you can talk to them and ask them questions. Also on Twitter, they are very active, so as soon as something is new on Amplify, it gets, you can see it there at the Amplify Twitter, and you can reach out to me, of course, on Twitter and LinkedIn if you have any more questions. Thanks, and that was it, I think.